be more assertive, to move forward. When we talk about how do we create better leaders in our institutions, that's really what viral leadership is all about. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about how do we unleash that capacity that an individual may have to take the best that they have in them and not only present it at work, but also become viral, spread it, give it to other people so that they feel like they can do the same thing. And that's really what we are going to discuss here today. This is actually a very small portion of a much larger topic, but we're going to see the highlights today of what's important about how to develop viral leadership. In essence, what we are going to see here is the work that I've been developing over the last few years through Learning for Managers, and now we are presenting it in collaboration with the Gulf Business Network. So we are very proud to be collaborating here with them to present this content. You already know a little bit about me through Nida, so thank you, Nida, again for your introduction. One of the things that I do want to incorporate here is that the principles that we're going to discuss here are going to be really global principles. It's not just tied to one region or another. And I'm particularly careful of that because when I teach, as you heard, I teach courses online with Cornell University. There I have students from all over the world. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there are some things that are very different from one region to the next. However, there are some core principles that are universal, and that's precisely what we will focus on today. We want to make sure that we discuss what is applicable to you, not only in your region, but if you do work for international or multinational companies, what is going to be applicable to your team locally as well as remotely in any satellite location. So let's go ahead and take a look then at the key topic here. So we're talking about how to boost our business results. The idea here is, how do I get better performance? How do I get better results? How do I get people to give me the best that they can? And how can I grow that? How can I make that multiply? If I already have a core team of people who are very good, how do I get that to multiply? How do I get that to spread throughout the organization to the rest of the team? And that's where the viral leadership comes in. The idea is how to build the right leaders, how to develop the right leaders or the right leadership skills, and then how do we allow that to flourish? How do we allow that to get nourished across the organization? To learn about this topic, one of the things that I would like to ask you to do is very briefly take a minute and I want you to think about what is it that, now that you understand the topic and as overall, what are some of the things that you really would like to know? And I will encourage you to think about those and write them down. And if you can send in your top topic to the Q&A area, to the question and answer area, the chat area, feel free to type that in there. What is your key topic? I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll make sure that I touch on those key topics. And of course, if you do have questions at the end about an area that I did not cover, at the end we will have the Q&A time where I'll make sure to cover those too. But for now, just think about in terms of boosting productivity, boosting results at work, what are some of those 3 key issues that I would really like to have answered? And send in the Q&A area your top 1, your most important one. Like I said, I'll keep an eye on those, and I'll try to see if I can answer it throughout the course. This course covers the following objectives. The objectives that we're going to cover are how to analyze why is it that leaders, or we're going to discover why is it that leaders fail to motivate teams. Sometimes we've seen situations, and I don't know if you've heard this phrase before, but people say often, employees don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And oftentimes that is what is happening. We have teams that fail to produce the results that we want because there is something missing on the management side, on the leadership side. Why is it that some leaders fail to motivate people? We're going to answer that. We're going to review some of that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is going to be the impact that leadership style preferences have on team performance. Many times leaders don't know what a style preference is and or how it can have an impact on the attitudes and the behaviors of your team members and the productivity. So we will cover that piece. We will also talk about what are the keys necessary, what are the elements that are indispensable in creating sustainable leadership and a sustainable leadership strategy, as opposed to just a leadership strategy. We're going to see what the difference is between having a leadership strategy and a sustainable leadership strategy. And we're going to discuss also what are then the effective strategies that we can use to implement, to improve leadership skills at all levels. And this is going to be a critical point, because one of the things that I think is very important for people to understand is that even if you are not in a leadership position, we want you to have leadership skills. That is critical to any organization, to any company, to understand that you need to help everyone improve their leadership skills regardless of their position, regardless of their title. We don't need to have a title or a position determining whether or not we are leaders. We all should learn leadership skills. Now, to cover all these objectives, what we'll do is we'll divide the course into 4 sections, in 4 modules. So here are the modules that we will cover today. We'll start with the perspectives of motivation, and that will help us understand those motivational issues that we discussed in the objectives. We will also discuss leadership styles and performance, which will help us understand how then, again, our style preferences impact our results. We will discuss sustainable leadership strategies themselves. And finally, we will talk about how to take leadership viral, how to make this happen and grow exponentially. Now, let's start with the first module. And these are the perspectives on motivation. We'll talk about how, again, we motivate people. What is it that makes people tick and get excited about what they do? What helps them bring about that passion that they have for what they do? And one of the things that I will do here is try and see if we can unlock, if you will, what is it that works for us? What is it that is important to us? So for this, what I'll ask you to do is this. Think for just a second. Think about a situation where you were working with a leader or a manager or a boss who really motivated you, who really made you feel like, wow, I really want to do this for this person. You had a task to complete, and you had someone who really made you feel like you could do it. And it made it happen. So think about that person for a minute. Think about what they did to help you stay motivated, to help you stay on task, to help you complete the job that you were going to do. Now think about those qualities. What did this person do? What did this person say to you? What was happening throughout this time? Okay. All right, now, when you think about it, an interesting thing that happens is this. When I tell people, okay, in general, tell me, what do you think motivates employees? And a common answer that I get when I hear that, when I pose the question is, well, money, financial reward, titles, raises, giving them a higher position, promotions. And so I ask you now, compare that back to what your thoughts were when you got motivated to do something. What that leader did that leader just give you money? In some cases, maybe they did. Maybe in some cases, they did promote you. But in most cases, what I find is that we are motivated not by financial reward or gifts or money or anything like that. On the contrary, it's actually something much different. It's the attitude of the person. It's the behaviors of the person. It's the treatment that person gave us that made the difference. And this is why understanding those elements is so important. You see, if we understand what those behaviors are that motivated us, then we can use that information. We can leverage that information. How can I leverage it? Because if I understand that if I do A, B, C things, if I understand that there are certain behaviors that provoke certain responses in certain people, then I have response predictability. What does that mean? That then I'll know that if this person reacts in this and that way to what I do in this and this other way, then I will get that response in those times. This response becomes predictable. And that's how we start becoming more productive. That's how when I start understanding that it is my behavior that can impact the behavior of another person. And if I just understand that other person a little better and what makes them click, what makes them tick, then I can adjust my behavior and predict the result. That allows me to unlock the potential of that other individual. It's like trying to figure out that we see here these locks with a key, that is always different. If I just figure out what the numbers are, what the key is to unlock that individual's potential, then I can get improved performance. And now the question is, well, so how do I get to those numbers? How do I unlock that key with each individual? To understand how to do this, we start with ourselves, really, and this was the activity that I was asking you to do just a minute ago, right? If you sit down and you start by describing in your mind, what are the things that managers that have motivated me, what are the qualities that they had, what are the things that they did, and why did that motivate me? Then you can start making a list of behaviors that you can duplicate. So I'll leave this as homework for you. Start doing that. Start thinking about what are the things that motivate you. What are the things that help you? So that's a good start. That's a starting point. But after you look at your list, I think that you're going to find something interesting. And I'm going to show you a model that you may be already familiar with. It's a very well-known model. And I like using it simply because it is easy to remember and is known. So no need to reinvent the wheel when there is something already that is very good out there. When you take a look at those behaviors and you take a look at what it motivated you, what incentivized you, take a look at those and then put this pyramid right next to those behaviors. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what we have here is, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a hierarchy that basically indicates where our needs are. What is it that we want? When we ask about what we want, this hierarchy starts at the bottom with physiological needs. In other words, it tells us that before I want to feel safe or anything else, I need to take care of my physiological needs, my survival pieces. So I need to eat, I need to have shelter, and then I worry about my safety. So that's where, again, taking care of myself is the next piece. And then another need that I have is to belong and be loved. But do you see how this works? I'm not so worried about being loved when I'm starving. So my physiological needs need to be taken care of before my belonging needs and love needs are taken care of. Then after that comes the esteem needs, and the self-actualization is the final step. Now, why are we talking about this? Well, how does this incorporate, how does this tie to what you did? If you pay attention to your exercise, again, with the things that motivated you to do a task and what the person did, here are some of the things that this person was doing, perhaps, and it's very likely they were doing this, and taking care of all these needs at the same time. In terms of physiological needs, this person was probably energetic and was not draining your energy. You were not feeling physically tired when you were dealing with this person. You actually felt engaged. In terms of safety, this is probably a person that was non-threatening and was trustworthy and helped you work with a trustworthy team. So if you want to have results in a team that are exponential, that are great, here's where it all starts. Are you taking care of these real needs that people have? And then you start from the bottom up. Then we can address things like belongingness and love. We work much better when we have a friendly, collaborative team environment, as opposed to one that is always in competition. Then comes the esteem part. We are usually performance-driven individuals. We like to have rewards, but they don't always have to be monetary. We like to be recognized for what we do. And again, when you look at the results that you had for your own example, chances are that's what you were getting. You were getting that pat on the back. You were getting that person to come over to you and tell you, wow, you did a great job, and that was reward in itself. And one of the key things here at the top is the self-actualization. We want to have a sense of autonomy, purpose, and value. We want to know that what we're doing is valuable for some reason, to the company or to you, to someone that matters to us. And when we look at this pyramid now I start to understand, oh, okay, so these are the things that people are looking for. These are the real needs that they have in terms of motivation. Now the question and the challenge to all of us here is, are we really taking care of all these needs? Are we addressing these concerns with all of them? Here's another element now that we want to discuss now is, how do we take this and apply it within the context of my style, my leadership style, and how does my leadership style impact, how does it have an impact on performance, the performance of my team? For those of you who don't know what style is and what we're talking about with style, let me introduce the MBTI. The MBTI is the Myers-Briggs type instrument. And this instrument helps us understand how we think, how we act, how we respond to the world by defining us using 4 letters. And there are 16 different preferences, and all of those preferences, again, are expressed through these 4 letters. Now, here is an interesting question some people ask. Some people say, well, wait a minute, can you really cast everybody into 4 letters? Can you really box people in like that? This doesn't make any sense. Well, you're right. People, we are very adaptable, right? And we have a different, when you think about it, we have a different face that we put on, or a different persona that we put on, depending on the environment, right? So you may be a certain type of person at the office, and you may be a different type of person at home, right? Your personality may come across as a little bit different. So you may be a very serious person at work, but very relaxed at home. And then community events, when you are celebrating someone's anniversary or something like that, or there is a community event, you may be also much more relaxed than you are at the office. So yes, we're very versatile. We change with the circumstances. However, there is something that happens to us, and that is that even though we are different from one circumstance to the other, from one situation to the other, there are some natural preferences that we all have. And let me explain how those natural preferences work. When you look at this picture, look at how they cross their arms. And think about this for a minute. Just observe and see if you can see what the difference is. What's the difference between how these people cross their arms? Do you see the difference? I'll give you a couple more seconds to figure it out. Okay, so let's take a look at the difference. The real difference is in the positions of the arms. You see this? One person uses their right arm and crosses it underneath. The other one uses their right arm and goes on top. The other one uses their left arm underneath, and the other one uses their left arm on top. Now, which one of these two is doing it the right way? Which one's correct? I give you 2 seconds to think about that. Which one is correct? Well, that's a silly question, isn't it? It's not about what's right or what's wrong here. I mean, it's just a preference. It's just their style. It's just how they do it. So that's how personality and leadership styles work. You see, we all have natural preferences. We all cross our arms in a certain way. Does it mean that we cannot cross them the other way? No. It's just that that's our preferred way. So what we can see here is this, that under certain circumstances, let's say at work, when you are at work, you probably have a preferred way to be at work. You have certain behaviors, certain attitudes, a certain phase that you put on, if you will, when you are at work. And that may be different than the one that you have at home, the way that you behave at home. It may be the same, I don't know. But even if it's different, it doesn't mean that at the work you couldn't be like you are at home. It's simply that you choose, it's your natural reaction while you're at work to behave in those ways. Now let's go back to that image of predictability. Remember what I was talking about? If we can predict how a person behaves under different circumstances, let's say at work, if I know what your natural preferences are, then it becomes a lot easier for me to predict behavior, and therefore I can leverage that knowledge to help you improve performance. That's what the MBTI does. The MBTI gives us 4 letters that basically are indicators of how we like to act under certain circumstances. So let me give you an example here. We have attitudes and orientation on the one hand side, and we have mental functions on the right hand side. So let's see how these work. We'll start with energy focus. Okay, my energy focus tells me how do I feel more energized, and we have two letters, I and E. I is for introversion, E is for extroversion. So on the I, you can see how we have here a few arrows going in. On the E, you see the arrows going out, right? Introversion, extroversion. A difference between the I and the E is that the I is going to prefer to think things through. They like to sit down and think about things instead of expressing them out loud. Whereas an E person will express things out loud, will like to say things out loud, will think things out loud. Then we have how we receive information, the information input. When we listen to information, we receive information around us, what's our preferred style of doing it? Some people prefer to use their senses. That's the S, sensing. Then there is the N. N stands for intuition. Now, intuition is a little bit difficult to explain, but it has to do with what some people call their gut feeling. So here's the difference. Someone who is sensing, for example, if you're giving them some information, that's the person that says, do you have any literature? Do you have a brochure? Do you have something that I can touch and read and feel? Can I have an experience? Can I try it? So that's the person that you have with the S. Whereas the N looks at the big picture, sits back and thinks about it, and just by their gut, by their feeling, they analyze how the situation works, what is happening. So they don't need to touch and feel, and they don't need evidence, they don't need hard evidence. They just go by concepts. The next level is decision making. We tend to think with our brain or with our heart. That's the difference between thinking and feeling. That's the T and F. So when we're thinking, for example, if you have a preference for thinking, you probably, when you make a decision, you focus on the facts, the data, and that's it. When you are making decisions based on feeling, then you probably are the kind of person that is more concerned about how people will react to your decision rather than the facts behind the decision. Finally, we have the structure approach. So how do we structure our approach? How do we structure what we do? You have J and P. J stands for judging, P for perceiving. The judging person, as you can see in the picture, is very black and white. It's yes and no. Their approach is quick, it's sharp, it's just let's make a decision now. As quickly as possible, and as black and white as we can make it. It's a yes or a no, that's it. Whereas the perceiving person sees a variety of options. You can see here a multicolored button, right? And that's what we have. The perceiving person says, no, wait a minute, before I've made my final decision and I do my final approach here, let's analyze what are all the options. There are many options to make a decision. So what is going on here? What are the options? Did we cover all the options? So let's take a look at one scenario here with an individual. Here is an individual that has these specific preferences. Let's call this fellow Dan for now. And what do we have with him? What we have is an individual whose energy focus is an I. Okay, so that means that instead of talking things out loud, this person likes to think things through. Now, let's think about this for a minute. What does that mean to us, when we're talking to this individual? If I'm asking them to give me an analysis on a situation, what will they need from me to be able to give me that analysis? If I say, let's talk it out loud, let's talk it through, that's not their preference. So the result doesn't mean that they cannot do it. But the result that I'm going to get is probably not as good as if I say, why don't you take a few minutes to think about this, and let's meet later, let's meet tomorrow, let's meet in an hour after you had a chance to think this through. If I already know that that's their preference, I can predict what's going to work best for them. Information input is sensing. This person likes to touch things, read things. So if I am asking someone to make a decision and this person is sensing, then I know they like to have literature in front of them. I know they want to read things through and touch them. And so if I'm asking them to do something here, maybe if I have a sample to give them, so they can experience it, so they can read through it, so they can touch it, that's what this person really needs, and then we're going to get a much better result. Whereas if they were N, again, that's not what interests them. They just want to have the big idea, the big picture. This person makes decisions by thinking. So this person is not as concerned about how the team is going to react, how this affects people. This person is very concerned about the facts and the data. So that's what I need to give them to get the best result. I have to consider, though, now if what I'm asking him to do is to give me information that later on is going to help me make a decision that could impact the team, I need to know that, because this person is not going to be concerned about the impact on the team and the people, right? So it's going to be very calculating, very mathematical, very computer-like. That's how this person thinks. I already know that from their style, right? So that tells me, oh, wait a minute, so I will need to step in as a leader later on and consider the people factor. And then finally, I have the structure approach, the J and V. What kind of person is this? This is a J. This person likes to make decisions here and now, fast, quick. That's it. So, okay, what do we do with this information? Little by little, I try to incorporate some ideas, right? The idea here is that if I understand their preferences, now I know how I can communicate with this person, give them the information that they need in the format that they need it, so that I can get the best result from this person. Once again, knowing this person's behaviors, this person's reactions, gives me predictability, and I can leverage that predictability to get better results. Let me give you a couple examples here on the impact of T and F. Imagine yourself as a leader now. What is your style? What is your preference? If your preference is feeling, then oftentimes when you're dealing with decisions and you're making decisions, you're going to feel like, wait a minute, who cares about the facts when people are not being heard? People need to be taken into account. The team needs to be addressed. Whereas if you're a thinking person, you're going to say, wait a minute, feelings, what does that have to do with this? We need to focus on the facts so we can get a solution. Now imagine being in an organization with two leaders and both making decisions, and one is T and the other one is F. So right away I know not only does this help me understand how I can motivate people and give them what they need to give me better results, it also tells me about conflict and how to prevent it. As a matter of fact, conflict is often determined by two aspects here of the MBTI: our way of making decisions, thinking or feeling, and our structure approach, the J and the P. When we don't match in those letters, that's most often where you're going to see conflict between people. So the examples here, an example of impact between P and J is if we're not on the same page, if we don't understand each other. A perceiving person is the person that needs to look at all the options. So this is the person that at the time of making a decision is going to say, no, wait a minute, we cannot make a decision yet. We haven't explored everything yet. Are we sure that we explored every option? Whereas the judging person is saying, why are we dragging this? We already know what we need to know. Let's just move forward with this. So you can see once again where I can prevent a lot of conflict when I have people that are of different mindset. If they understood each other, if they know each other's type, then they can work together to come to common ground to address these issues. Now we're going to get closer. Now we already started building up our knowledge, right? Now we have enough tools to know, okay, there are certain things I need to know. And now that I know about style and preferences, now I know how and why I need to know this to leverage people performance and to motivate people. But the question now is, once I have this under control, now we're going to talk about the sustainable leadership strategies. How do I make this something that when people learn about this, they don't forget about it in 3 weeks, right? Because many times that's what happens. We introduce a new idea to our workplace, and then soon enough it gets forgotten and we go back to old habits. To understand what sustainable leadership is, we need to understand this basic concept. What is the difference between leadership, strategic leadership, and sustainable strategic leadership? What do you think is the difference? I'll give you just a few seconds to think through this and see if you can come up with the differences. All right, so let's talk about leadership for a second. Leadership skills, we all should have leadership skills, and we should be nurturing that in all our employees, all our team members. When we're talking about leadership skills, it's the ability to take a team and be motivated by this individual, by the leader, to follow them and to work with them towards a common goal. That's a very, very basic definition, and again, it's not the only definition, it's only a part of the definition. I know that there is a lot more to it, but for now, let's just stop there for a minute, okay? So if I have a leader, that's great. People are going to follow. They're going to have a vision, and they're going to be able to direct people to the vision. With strategic leadership, the difference is going to be that not only is this person the kind of person that has a vision and gets others to follow, is the strategic leader is the person who is aware of the competition, is aware of what else is happening around them. So there may be other people, other competitors, for example, who may be looking at what you're doing and who are also following your path or moving on a parallel path, but you are able to stay ahead of the rest because you are strategizing. You're using your strategy to beat the competition. So that's the difference between leadership and strategic leadership. Now, sustainable strategic leadership, what does that mean? It means that even if you get to a stop, it doesn't matter because you know how to realign, you know how to adapt, you know how to keep moving forward and stay ahead of the competition regardless of any changes in the environment and any changes in what is happening in your situation. And that is a very critical concept. When we're talking about leadership, and again, we talked about style, we talked about how we can impact other people, we need to understand that if there is one thing that is always constant, that is change. And if we are going to be leaders that think long-term about how we're going to continue our performance improvement plan, how we're going to continue to grow, we need to find ways in which we not only stay ahead of everybody else, but we stay alert and ahead of potential differences, changes in our circumstances that may stop others but won't stop us because we already have a plan to maintain and sustain where we're going. Now, where do I find that key element that allows me to do that? That's to have a sustainable leadership strategy in place. I like this quote from this coach when he says, you know, they, in their case, they don't worry about what the other team is doing, they worry about themselves. They say, although we have to adjust to their system and their scheme, again, that's where the strategic leadership comes in, right? You always are in competition mode. We're more focused on us than them. Our biggest concern is making sure we are 100% on our assignments and effort and control what we can. This is how I interpret what this fellow is saying. I interpret that when you look at your structures, what gives you the competitive advantage from a strategic point of view, you have the strategic decisions that are made based on structure, processes, and people. And out of those, all of those, the critical aspect is going to be the people. Why? Because you can add more resources to your structure. You can change your processes in many ways. But if your people are not aligned and put in a position where they can continue to improve on a regular basis, none of your structure or process changes matter. Not only that, but if you want to really get the biggest productivity for your investment, that productivity is going to happen with your people. If you want to stay ahead and sustain your company and your unit, only is this the area of best growth and sustainability, this is also the area of innovation. Systems, processes, structures do not innovate. They do not come up with better solutions, with better ways to do things. So if something changes drastically in the industry, your structure and your processes are not going to change by themselves. It's the people that make the changes. So innovation happens at the people level. And that's why we focus so much on this concept of leadership for people, creating leaders, because they, at all levels, are the ones who are going to give us what we need to stay ahead. Here is what stops the process. Okay, here are some of the issues that happen, though, that are inherent in all our workplaces, and that I've noticed over the years have been a common theme with every leader that I talk to, with every manager that I talk to, with every employee that I talk to. They say, you know, this is all great, but this is my obstacle. This is what keeps me from being able to take my team to the next level. Number one issue is lack of clarity. You see the picture here, it looks fuzzy, it's not very clear. When people talk to me and about what their issues are at work, and this is what I hear a lot, is that when they're trying to implement a strategy, they have a goal, they have a vision, they put it in front of the team, and the team members are not very clear about what that meant. How am I supposed to do this, is what they ask. I don't understand. What's the purpose of doing this? What's going on? Why do I need to do this? What's the purpose of doing this? Now, go back to the beginning of what we discussed earlier. Remember what we talked about with the needs that people have? At the very top of the hierarchy, the need was to be able to feel valued, that they have purpose, that they have autonomy. When we just give down orders to our teams and we don't help them feel like they are a valuable part of a big, important goal, what happens? They don't feel as engaged. They don't feel as they're valued or valuable to what's happening. And instead, how they feel is confused. That lack of clarity often causes confusion. When they don't understand what's my purpose of doing this, that's where the problem begins. The next step, the next issue that is tied to lack of clarity is waste. What happens in the waste aspect here? What happens when the teams are not clear on what they're supposed to do? Oftentimes, as we see here in the picture, I like this example. We have a fellow who will start a draft and realizes, no, this is not it. Starts another draft, no, this is not it. Maybe presents the draft to you. You say, no, this is not what I'm asking for. Go back to it again. So we waste a lot of time. We waste a lot of resources. In the end, sometimes you are the one who ends up doing the job. Or you prefer not to delegate because of that. You prefer to say, you know what, I'm not even going to give this to anybody. I'm just going to do this myself because I get it. I know. I don't know why these people don't get it. And to eliminate waste, then, or in an effort to eliminate waste, that's what you end up doing. The problem is that it doesn't stop there. After having dealt with the lack of clarity and the waste, then the last piece of the issue here is conflict. When we have lack of clarity, that leads to waste, wasted time, wasted resources, wasted effort, wasted energy, and that wasted energy, wasted effort goes into finger pointing. The last step of this process is where people say, well, you were not telling me what I was supposed to do. You didn't give me everything that I needed. You did, you. So people start pointing the fingers at each other, blaming each other because of what they didn't get, because of what they didn't understand, because of what the other person didn't do for them. Critical to understand this, because now we understand why our goals don't get met. You see where it happens? It happens in this process of lack of clarity, wasted time, and conflict. When we have a goal, if we really want to improve performance in our businesses, we need to understand this process to stop it. We need to understand that people need to have more clarity when we're setting our goals. And that communication starts with what? With our style. What did I do when I was setting my goal from a style perspective to communicate to these other people in a way that they understood it better? Again, if I have someone who is an I instead of an E, for me to discuss the issue may not have been as clear as me giving them the literature so they could think it through and give them time to process the information. If they were S versus N, again, same thing. If I didn't give them literature, if I didn't give them experience, if I didn't give them a sample, then they didn't understand. They didn't have the clarity they needed because their preference, their style, wasn't addressed. And that leads to wasting time, and that leads to conflict. And again, that conflict piece, more wasted time, right? If we do not understand that conflict happens at the TFJP level, then we don't address it soon enough. When we don't address it soon enough, it becomes into more wasted time and yet more missed goals. Now that I have these together, let's talk about how we can then take those positive pieces and take it viral. How do we take this to our teams and make the good stuff spread throughout the organization, those good leadership skills? Here is where the problem starts oftentimes and where we miss opportunities. So let me show you this career path of these two individuals. Here we have Eric and we have Asha. And Eric is entry-level computer network systems installer. You know, he likes to put computers together and network, so we just hire him to do that. And here's Asha. She started as a chemist, you know, so she's in a beginning of her career also. She's just coming into our company and she's putting together, you know, some formulas. She's working in the production department. Now, as they grow in their career, you know, they get updated, they get promoted to the next step. So what happens here? The computer installer becomes a website security manager. The entry-level chemical engineer becomes goes into new product development, and she's a manager there. What happened here? Well, they were really good at what they did, so they got promoted. Now, so far, they still need the same competencies that they had when they came in. They just need to be more specialized because they're helping other team members with questions that their experience can answer. So that's great. So far, so good. But then something happens. They get promoted again. And they get promoted beyond the line of competency. That line of competency means that now they're promoted to manage other people. Those are not the same competencies they had before. You know, that a computer engineer, they started as a computer engineer, became a computer network manager. That's great. He knows about management of the computer systems, but what does he know about managing people? And yet we're going to promote him because he was really good at what he did before, but he's been promoted into something where his competency stopped. He wasn't prepared for this. The same with Asha. She was a good chemist, but what does she know about the chemistry between people? If she has not been prepared beyond this point, what is going to happen? People are going to start second-guessing themselves. They're going to be asking themselves, wow, I don't know if I'm ready to do this. And many of those new managers end up leaving their management positions, and you end up leaving good, talented people because you thought, hey, the only way that I could give these people a reward was by moving them ahead, but now putting them in a position where they were going to fail because they didn't really know what they were doing. And these people are afraid all the time of making decisions. So when you see the new managers, the new promoted people are struggling, oftentimes this is the number one reason why, because they're afraid of the choices they're going to make. And who wouldn't be? I mean, let's think about where these people learn those skills. How do they figure this out? How do they know how to be good leaders, good managers? And Learning for Managers, we did a survey a few years back, and this is actually what we found out. We asked people, you know, how do you learn how to hire good people? And these managers told us, well, no one taught us. We kind of just figured it out on our own. 42% of managers taught us that they taught themselves how to do interviews. Imagine now your teams. You know, how are you putting? If you're asking yourself, are we putting together the best team possible? Well, if your managers don't know how to do this, or they taught themselves, you know, do you really think that you have the best teams? The next question that we asked, or another question we asked, was, if conflict happens, you know, that's a lot of wasted time and resources. Do you know how to handle it? Who taught you how to handle it? 37% told us they taught themselves how to do it. And finally, we have this other question. You know, well, what we want to do is boost performance. We want better performance improvement in our teams. Who doesn't, right? Every company, we all want this. Well, we asked that question too. How do you learn how to do this? 31% taught themselves. This is basically saying that 3 out of 10 people, basically 3 to 4 people, keep teaching themselves everything they need to know about management. Think about your company. Out of 10 managers that you have running in your company, 3 to 4 of those taught themselves, and who knows what they taught themselves. That's a very, very dangerous situation, isn't it? This is the key about taking leadership viral. If you want to take leadership viral, meaning if you want to make sure that the good pieces, the good traits, the good characteristics of your best leaders are spread out, you need to start training. Take those people who are the best at what they do, learn from them what is it that works for them, just like we were doing during this exercise. That's basically what we're doing here. Learn from them what are they doing well, what works well, identify how it meets the needs of different people. You can use the Maslow's hierarchy to figure that out, and then implement a training plan again that helps them teach those skills to their own team members, and to do it so by matching their style preferences. Help them learn by understanding what their own style is, and teach people about their preferences, their style preferences, so they can communicate better with each other, so you can get more clarity, so you can get better results. don't leave it up to them to teach themselves how to do this, because chances are it's not going to work very well for you. Finally, the last step in this whole process is celebrate success. One of the big things that most companies miss, that most organizations miss, is celebrating success. Many of them forget that it is very important to take everybody to that excitement level, that at the top of the pyramid, if you remember, again, to feel that value, to feel that they have purpose, this has to be celebrated. So celebrate success with people after any little win. It doesn't matter how big the success was, whatever project they were working on. Make sure that everyone feels valued, that everyone feels recognized, because that's what is going to sustain that leadership status in their mind, that feeling of accomplishment, celebrating success. Well, we have come to the end of our presentation. And I know that we have some question and answers time now. I want to thank you again. It's been a pleasure working with you today and doing this presentation for you. I remind you, we have our book, Viral Leadership, also online. It's at Amazon.com. It's available through there. And again, we thank you for your time and for your attention to this topic here today. I hope that it was helpful to many of you. Now, Nina, I know that we have some questions, or that we've been waiting for some questions from our audience, so I'm ready for your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. George, for a very interesting presentation. Folks, we are open for the question and answers. You can either put your question in the chat box, or you can raise the hand icon available on your webinar console. So let me go straight ahead to the first question, and the question is, what is the biggest challenge facing leaders today?
Biggest challenge facing leaders today? That's a good question. And again, going back to my experience with Cornell University, with Cornell, I've gone back and I've tried to categorize, what is happening worldwide with leadership. And the biggest challenge that I keep hearing is, we need to establish a pipeline of leadership. We need to prepare our people, because we're afraid that we're starting to lose a lot of our leaders. A lot of our leaders are retiring. A lot of the people with experience, with the knowledge, are retiring. So as they are moving out of the workforce, we have all these new people coming on board that don't have the experience. And managers make mistakes, when they're not trained. And as you notice here, what happened here is precisely what is happening. When I asked them, why do you think that what is happening? They realized, well, we have all these new managers that get promoted. Let's say that someone was very good at sales. And in selling, they were very good. So we promote them, but they don't have people management skills. And that's where the issues are. When these people are not very good at communicating, then we have lack of clarity. We have waste, we have wasted goals, missed goals, and conflict. So these people decide to do things themselves. They don't perform at the level that they wish they did. They get frustrated. New managers leave, and then we have to find another one. So how to make this sustainable? How do we create new leaders? How do we build them up? And how do we make it sustainable? That's the number one issue that I've seen in leadership. How to create that bench, of new leaders to take their spot. And that's what we're trying to do here. Again, this is why we're proposing this idea of viral leadership. If we put these steps into place, we are addressing precisely that need.
Thank you, Mr. George, for the answer. Let me go to another question, and that is, what is one behavior or trait that you have seen derail more leaders' careers?
What is one trait that what again?
What is one behavior or trait that you have seen derail more leader careers?
Derail more leader careers. Wow, that's a very good question. The biggest, most damaging trait is the same one that leads to, again, to people not wanting to delegate, not trusting their teams, not wanting to do what is necessary to really develop and build a team. And oftentimes it's not done on purpose. It's not in a mean way that they're doing this, but it is basically the idea, the thought that everything falls on their shoulders and they're the only ones capable of getting the job done. And sometimes it does come across in a mean way. You don't know what you're doing. It's just give it to me. I'll do it. Many times that's what ends up happening. But oftentimes it's when you have someone who inadvertently does it. You have people who will have a quick meeting with a staff member. The staff member says, well, you gave me this task, and now I'm not so sure how to do this. So then the manager, in an effort to help, comes in and says, oh, well, yeah, well, let me take a look at it. And then now the task went from the subordinate, from the person doing the job, to the manager. Now the manager is doing the subordinate's job. And that happens with 5 people a day, and then the manager doesn't have time. So it's a time management issue, but it leads to behavioral issues, right? The trait here is the inability to know what delegating means. So the inability to know that delegating means to give other people tasks, means to build trust, to build confidence, to build the skill set that these people need so that they can handle those things themselves. So if you are that kind of person where you realize you don't have enough time on your schedule because you're doing other people's work, that's probably what is going to take you out of the management trade, the leadership career quickly.
Thank you, Mr. George. We have another one, and that is using monetary incentives for motivating employees. Is that the only way to keep them motivated, or are there other ways?
That's a good question. There has been a lot of studies done on motivation, and one of the things, if I can recommend a book for you that is not my book, but if there's a book by Dan Pink, P-I-N-K, and it's called Drive. And if you look it online, there's actually a video online by RSA that depicts some of the principles of his book, and I like it because he puts a lot of research together. And one of the things that he points out is this: many people, there are incentive, that you give them an incentive that is monetary. If it is for a basic task that is like a manual task where you don't have to do a lot of thinking, that seems to work. A small reward works well, monetary reward. For people who are more at a higher level, who are doing thinking tasks, that money, that reward actually works against you. You will get worse results. And that's part of what we discussed here at the beginning of the class too. Most people, the majority of people, what they're looking for is to get to that higher need, right? To get to, and here's the slide that we were discussing, that sense of autonomy, purpose, and value. That's what people are really seeking. And when you think about, again, the rewards that you've received, what motivated you the most to get a task done that was very difficult, that was very challenging, those kinds of challenges are best addressed with other traits than money. Money alone won't do it. Actually, money or rewards, gifts of any sort, are probably going to work against you and give you worse results.
Thank you, Mr. George. Let me go to another question, and that is, how do we maintain our team's daily motivation and inspiration despite obstacles, pushbacks, or setbacks?
Very good, and that's where we go back to the issue of understanding style. A lot of the times the obstacles, it depends on what the obstacle is. Again, sometimes we think, well, we just don't have enough money, we just don't have enough resources, we don't have. But really, if you work on this, if you work on understanding your preferences, understanding people, understanding how I can communicate better with people and make them feel valued, that has overcome a lot of obstacles. I've talked to people in many industries, and every time I get the same thing. When I hear about people telling me, we have a great team and we work very well together, and I ask them, well, do you have all the resources that you need, all the money, well, no, actually we're low on budget. We actually cut back on the budget. We actually don't have enough people to as we had last year, so we have less people. We have to do more. But as long as they're a great team and they feel like they can understand each other and work well together, that overcomes a lot of obstacles. So it really starts here. It starts with understanding each other and being able to communicate clearly with each other, understanding what the expectations are of each behavior. And if you understand the types and the preferences, that's a great start.
Thank you, Mr. George. We have one last one before we come to an end to the session, and that is, what advice would you give someone going into a leadership position for the first time?
Someone going into leadership for the first time, that's really, really a good question and a really good point. And that's where I go back to my example here with our two fellows. Many times what happens with individuals is that they get promoted not because of their leadership skills per se, but because they were really good at their technical expertise, what they knew before. So if they were a nurse, they got promoted because they were the best nurse on the floor. If they were a salesperson, they get promoted because they were the ones that brought in the most numbers. If they were, and so on and so forth, an engineer, they were the best engineer on the floor. And that means that they get promoted for a skill set that is completely different to what you need as a manager and a leader. So I encourage you to educate yourself, to find resources, to talk to your leadership and say, hey, I want to be, I was a star before, I want to continue to be a star performer, but for that I need the tools and the skills to do that. And that means I need to train myself, I need to educate myself. So seek out training opportunities. The seminars that you have here through the GBN Training Center are great. This is a great start. I would recommend that you keep registering to these trainings because obviously you're getting very good speakers and you get a lot of good results here. I suggest my book also, Viral Leadership is another way to get some basic tools that will help you with that start. That's exactly what it was written for, the new leader, the one that's starting. And, through Learning for Managers also, we have other resources. But I encourage you, again, to educate yourself and train yourself, and take the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs training, the personality test that I was describing here, the Myers-Briggs type inventory, and you can write to us, and I can point you to how you can take that personality inventory so it can help you throughout your career.
Thank you, Mr. George. This brings us towards the end of this webinar. Any concluding remarks from your side before we end this session?
I simply want to, again, thank you and GBN Training Center for this opportunity. I know that you are very busy people, and I really, really hope that this has been valuable to all of you. I wish you the very best in your careers and to your teams.
Thank you, Mr. George. Thank you very much, and I really want to thank you on behalf of Gulf Business Network and Training Centers for your valuable time and sharing valuable information with us. And thank you all of those who have attended this webinar. We are recording this webinar, and it will be uploaded on our website. So please stay tuned to webinar.gbntc.com for updates or for downloading the soft copy of this presentation in case you've missed it or you want to see it again. With this, I'd like to end the webinar, and you all will be automatically dismissed once this session ends. Thank you, Mr. George, and thank you all of you who have attended this webinar. You all have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. George. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.